Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha Kudash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And Lowell, and this will be a quick one, but an interesting one to say the least. Now, here, as you can see in this headline, this is from NewYorkPost.com. And the title reads, Trump confirms plans to use military force to deport migrants after declaring national emergency. Okay, and so this has been circulating, right, I think as of today, right, this morning, where you have different news sites now bringing this out, right, about Trump confirming that. Let me actually read a little bit of this here. So it says President-elect Donald Trump confirmed Monday he would declare a national emergency to deport illegal migrants using military force once he steps back into office. Trump made the statement on Truth Social, responding true in response to a post from Judicial Watch's Tom Fitton saying there are reports he would do so. Good news reports are incoming at Real Donald Trump administration prepared to declare a national emergency and will use military assets to reverse the Biden invasion through a mass deportation program, Fitton wrote on the social media platform. Now, the interesting thing about this is, for individuals who haven't heard or are not familiar, there's something called a document, right, called Rex 84, which stands for Readiness Exercise 1984. And in this document here, I'm going to read a little bit of it to you, and you'll start to see, here the correlation between what's written here. This goes back to the 1980s, and what we might very well be getting ready to see. Okay, so what that means is, if indeed, right, this does go forward, right, and Trump ends up actually doing this, there's going to be more going on behind the scenes than just a normal declaration of emergency or national emergency, because the type of emergency matters, and the powers or authority that they now are able to assume, both, the federal government as well as some agencies here, in a state of national emergency for this very reason. Those are sort of abstracted when you just hear national emergency. So when we go into this document here, you'll see what are some of the things. Really, this is publicly available, but pretty sure that there's also some things that are not publicly available here. Though here it's mentioned as a deportation. We all know that most of these first steps are really just getting the foot in the door. And once the foot is in the door, really it can go anywhere from that. So from now, it looks like that's what the plan is. And we have to wait and see, because a lot can happen, right? A lot can happen. And typically when you have cases like this where there's this foreshadowing ahead of time, this is going to happen here, this is going to happen here, and it starts to build people's anticipation, there's a chance that it doesn't even happen at all. Right, there's a chance that they don't even let this guy go up in there or whatever the case is. And then there's also a chance that they do, right? So reading this here, it says Rex 84B, short for Readiness Exercise 1984 Bravo, was a classified scenario and drill developed by the United States federal government to detain large numbers of United States residents deemed to be national security threats in the event that the president declared a national emergency. So what can possibly happen? Okay, there's a national emergency has been declared. They're going after illegal migrants, but then on the same time, you have some extreme leftists, I guess they would call them, or whatever side they want to call them, that are now sort of joining in here, intervening in here, causing some divide. Really, any reason that they have, that they determine to deem you a national security threat, subjective to whatever they define a threat to be, you can find yourself being lumped in here, right? according to this scenario here. So it says here, so keywords, right? National security threats, U.S. federal government, detaining U.S. residents, national emergency, right? These are some key words here to pay attention to. The scenario envisioned state defense forces rounding up 500,000 undocumented Central American residents and 4,000 American citizens whom the U.S. Attorney General had designated as national security threats as part of the secret continuity of government program. So by whatever means, metrics, avenue that this U.S. Attorney General used, he's able to then designate, right, some citizens as national security threats. But the key part here is, in this scenario, interesting enough, it's related to rounding up these thousands, hundreds of thousands of undocumented Central American residents. The same kind of problem. Now, the question is, in this scenario, how would you end up in this place in the first place, right? Like, how would you end up in a case where you have all these undocumented residents? If Biden, right, if let's say the whole Biden administration situation of opening the borders, letting anybody in here, if that actually didn't happen, then chances of a scenario like this happening would be very, would be less than it is now, at least, right? Now it's so out of hand that something like Rex 84 doesn't sound crazy anymore. In fact, that's pretty similar to what Trump is saying here, right? So, and what happens if this does end up happening and then there's pushback from the migrants, but more specifically like the gangs, those that actually have means of firing back, so to speak? That could very well cause things to take an interesting turn. So it says these people would be detained at 22 military bases in concentration camps run by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. That's FEMA. This is documented, okay? This isn't made up, right? This is an actual document, readiness exercise, and it's a scenario that the U.S. federal government themselves came up with. Now, you can imagine if Trump was to come out and say, yes, we're going to use the federal government to round up illegal immigrants and some U.S. citizens and then put them in concentration camps. You can imagine that'd be a bit of an uproar. But if you were to say, well, I did say that we are going to clean up the country, we are going to get these migrants out, and I'm going to use a federal force and a national emergency to do so, once again, that's a way to get your foot in the door. Once the state of emergency has been declared, and then you can easily say something like, well, based on the way things are going, it's not going to be as easy as just deporting them. We might need to round some of them up. We might need to detain some of them, and figure out what we're going to do from there. The point is, it's a fluid kind of scenario. Like when they have these live exercises, it can go either way. But now let's read a bit about the background here, right, where a lot more of the information is. So it says the existence of master military contingency plans, of which Rex 84 was a part, right? This is just one document of many. Operation Garden Plot and a similar earlier exercise, Lantern Spike, were originally revealed by journalist Ron Wiedenher, who summarized his findings in a 1975 article in Counter Spy magazine. Starting in 1981, the DoD, right, Department of Defense, and FEMA began a tradition of biannual joint exercises to test civil mobilization using the names Proud Saber and Rex 82. In 1984, the scenario involved a U.S. Army rehearsal of airlifting the entire 82nd Airborne Division, about 15,000 troops, from Fort Bragg in North Carolina, under the cover of night, and flying them to either El Salvador or Nicaragua as a simulated invasion to enforce a state of martial law. So, once again, you don't come up with these scenarios just because, right? When you think of scenarios, they're in correlation to some either the state you're in, something you might be anticipating, something you might be planning, and that's when you start to lay out scenarios. Usually, when you plan for something, okay, ideally, what do we want to happen? Okay, if that didn't happen, what could happen? Plan A, Plan B, Plan C, right? If things went wrong, what would that look like, and how can we plan for that? Those are scenarios. Okay, so if you are planning a road trip, for example, and there's like different scenarios of how things can turn out, what happens if we run out of gas, or what happens if the place is closed, or whatever the case is. You're not going to be throwing in scenarios of what happens if my neighbor down the block's dog, poops on his carpet. That has nothing to do with what interests you. So that's not going to be included in your scenario, though it is a scenario. So the point here is that the scenarios you come up with are tied closely to either something you're planning or something you're anticipating. So when you see scenarios like this goes to show you what mindset or what the agenda is concerning, cases like this. So continuing where we at, this part of the exercise had been codenamed Rex 84 Night Train. And that's the key part right there too. Flying them over the cover of night. Usually that's what they like to do. So when you wake up in the middle of the night with like lights in your face and lasers on your chest and stuff like that, that's sort of what they like to do, catch you unaware. This part of the exercise has been codenamed Rex 84 Night Train, and the overall readiness exercise involving 34 federal agencies was codenamed Rex 84, with FEMA's role in assisting the Department of Defense as Rex 84 Alpha. Later, when the mass detention scenario involving FEMA was added at the request of FEMA Director Louis Giuffrida and Reagan advisor Edwin Meese. So this is a while back, but it doesn't matter, okay, because it's still relevant. And personally authorized by Ronald Reagan, the mass detention scenario was codenamed Rex 84 Bravo. It was modeled in a 1970s Giuffrida Meese Reagan exercise in California known as Operation Cable Splicer. So, for those that think these are all just conspiracy theories, and whoever comes in office, they're briefed on these things. They know what these things are. They know what's there. They know what has been authorized and approved by different presidents and different people who held, office. So they know what they have in their arsenal, and they also know, what they can use and what they can use without telling you that they're using. The plan was first discovered by Christic Institute in 1984 and first revealed in detail in a major daily newspaper by reporter Alfonso Chardy in the July 5th, 1987 edition of Miami Herald. Possible reasons for such a roundup were reported to be widespread opposition to a U.S. military invasion abroad, such as if the United States were to directly invade Central America, to combat what the government perceived as subversive activities. And let's look that up. Okay, subversive activities here. So subversive activity is lending of aid, comfort, and moral support to individual groups or organizations that advocate the overthrow of incumbent governments by force and violence. So pretty much if you were almost like treason, like if you were supporting a group that is advocating to rise up or overthrow a government, like sort of how these some of these individuals are doing or trying to push for, then that might be a reason here to institute these roundups. The plan also authorized the military, right, to direct the movement of civilian populations at state and regional levels, according to Professor Diana Reynolds. So this isn't like they would have power, like according to this last sentence here, they would have power and authority and jurisdiction, right, in order to facilitate that movement at state levels and regional levels. So it's not like, oh, that's the federal government and you have the state and the state has a say in this. No, this is a national emergency. So now those powers are elevated. So they can come in and determine, okay, you know, who's going where and so on. And don't expect your governors and mayors to do much, because they can't. But anyway, this is what I thought of right when I heard this here. Now, you know, what was it? What are we? Still November? So we're still some time away from January, but we'll see. You know, we'll see what ends up happening right between now and then, and we'll see what ends up happening then at that time. It's all in the hands of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai anyway. But this is 2 Corinthians 2:11. Lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. So by not being ignorant of his devices, his plans, we are able to look ahead, foresee any possible, you know, evils, and hide ourselves primarily by continuing to follow the ways of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai. Because that's really, like, if they set something like this up, man, trust and believe you as an individual are not doing much against a swarm of troops with some military grade weapons, ARs with lasers right to your face. You ain't doing much there. So if they wrongfully deem you as a target, you're going to need some help. All right, you're going to need some help. And just having guns is not going to help you, because guns are useless if you don't know how to use them. And you using your gun that you could afford, probably with not enough bullets or whatnot, against people who have been training professionally years to do this, right? You know, your chances of surviving or winning against them is little to none. Anyway, with that, I'm going to end it here. Lord willing, that was edifying and informative to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachah, Quadash. And until next time, Shalom.